chapter 5, I try to answer the question, what is the economic impact of the Olympic Games? What are the costs? What are the benefits? As the title Number Games suggests, there's not just one answer, but many. Actually, cost estimates range from 500 billion yen to 2.8 trillion yen. How is that possible? The reason is that if you want to make an assessment of the economic impact of the games, you have to make assumptions about what would be or what would have been without the games. And these assumptions are, in a way, arbitrary. Take, for example, the new Olympic Stadium. The 1964 stadium was demolished and the new one was constructed for the Games. But if you look at the Tokyo Metropolitan Government's 10-year development plan, the old one would have been taken down anyway and a new one would have been built. So should you allocate the costs and benefits of having a new national stadium to the Olympics? The same question applies to all other items in the cost-benefit analysis. For example, tourists. A lot of tourists are expected to come for the Games. But how many would have come without the Games? We don't know, we can't observe. But in order to assess the economic impact of the Games with regard to the number of tourists that come to the city, we have to make an assumption about how many would have come without the Games. But as we don't observe this alternative, we can only make guesses. And according to what guess you make, the number will be different. In my research on the Japanese economy, I've also been studying fiscal policy, the revenues and expenditures of the government. Now, the Tokyo Metropolitan Government and the central government, they have to bear a large portion of the costs of the Olympic Games. Now, when you look at the cost estimates, and I said there's a wide range of cost estimates, actually, the highest estimate comes from adding up the different games-related budgets of the Tokyo Metropolitan Government and the central government. Why? Shouldn't they be concerned about the costs of the games? Shouldn't they come up with the lowest or lower cost estimates? No, that's not in their interest. Actually, the games provide a window of opportunity for ministries, for the bureaucracy to secure additional budgets. Actually, we know this from other occasions, like in the aftermath of a disaster, the Japanese government also secures huge budgets for reconstruction, more than they actually use afterwards. And also now, for example, the economic downturn during the corona crisis, again, the government immediately came up with a historically huge budget. So this shows that the Olympic Games are just another event for the Japanese government to secure a lot of public money, which, if it's not used in the end for the Games, it might be used for other things. The postponement of the Games started another number game about the costs. So, for example, the ROC estimates that the costs of postponing the Games for 1 year are 85 billion yen. The Nikkei Shimbun reported cost estimates of 640 billion yen. I think both are in a way wrong because they compare the postponement with the situation of having the Games as originally planned. And this is, of course, not realistic because we are now in the midst of a global pandemic and there's no way that there could be any games as originally planned. So in order to assess the economic impact of the postponement, I think we have to compare it with alternatives that take into account the COVID-19 crisis. And these alternatives would be holding the games in the midst of a global pandemic or canceling the event altogether. And if we look at these alternatives, I think the postponement decision is probably the least expensive and the most reasonable for the various stakeholders involved here. The numbers, the 85 billion or 640 billion yen, are not the costs of deciding the postponement given the COVID-19 crisis, but they are the costs resulting from the COVID-19 crisis, which prompted then the postponement decision.